For just $200, would you believe you could own a watch that looks almost identical to an $11,000 Swiss Rolex? Behind that 55-fold price difference lies a secret network of workshops in China, where a new generation of so-called super clones has emerged. Luxury Swiss designs are digitally scanned, broken down into individual components, and distributed across specialized facilities. The case may be machined in one workshop, the dial finished in another, while the movement is selected according to the replica's price tier. Eventually, every component converges at the assembly table, where a watch costing only a few $100s is transformed into a replica with the appearance of a luxury timepiece worth tens of thousands. In today's video, join Factron Process as we step inside the silent battle between Switzerland's centuries-old watchmaking legacy and China's secretive copying machine. Counterfeit watches have existed for decades, but only in the past 20 years have they evolved into a global underground industry. Every year, tens of millions of fake Swiss watches are offered for sale, causing billions of dollars in losses. Most alarming is the rise of the super clone, replicas created through three-dimensional scanning, precision machining, and increasingly sophisticated imitation movements. The naked eye is no longer enough to tell the difference. The case must be opened, the movement removed, and each internal component carefully inspected. The damage, therefore, extends far beyond lost revenue. It threatens trust itself. When a $500 replica can carry the appearance of a luxury watch worth 50 times more, the entire high-end watch market begins to look as fragile as a structure built on sand. Many people assume that a few photographs from the internet are enough to create a watch that looks like the genuine product. In reality, studying a high-end design often requires counterfeit operations to spend as much as $40,000 just to obtain an authentic watch for analysis. The watch is then completely disassembled so that every component can be examined, from the case, crystal, dial, and hands, to the bracelet, clasp, and internal movement. A mechanical movement may contain more than 100 tiny parts, meaning that even a slight dimensional error can prevent the components from fitting together correctly. Technicians then use calipers, digital scales, macro photography, and in some cases, three-dimensional scanners to record the dimensions, weight, and shape of each part. This information is transferred into CAD software, where a digital model of the watch is reconstructed before physical manufacturing begins. With the help of this technology, modern counterfeit watches can reproduce nearly every visible identifying detail, including the logo, crown emblem, typeface, dial layout, and even the smallest markings engraved on the clasp or bezel. Yet this is also where the counterfeit industry reaches its greatest limitation. The appearance may become increasingly convincing, but the quality of the materials, the precision of the finishing, the long-term durability, and the value of the movement inside remain far more difficult to replicate. That is why professional authenticators rarely judge a watch by appearance alone. Instead, they evaluate the entire timepiece, from the quality of its finishing and the way it feels in the hand, to the accuracy, reliability, and performance of the movement inside. From the CAD model, workers create a parts list with the required dimensions, quantities, and costs. Most counterfeit workshops do not manufacture every component themselves. Instead, they operate as assembly centers, sourcing movements, crystals, bracelets, clasps, and rubber gaskets from different suppliers. To avoid detection, these parts are often shipped in separate small parcels. In 2021, about 65% of counterfeit goods moved through postal and small package networks. Once the components arrive, workers sort and test fit them by model. The crystal, bracelet, clasp, and movement are checked for proper alignment. Even an error of a few tenths of a millimeter can prevent the watch from fitting together, forcing the entire batch to be adjusted or replaced. When the case components first arrive at the workshop, they are still little more than rough cast metal blanks, covered with mold marks, burrs, and sharp edges. These seemingly minor imperfections can prevent the bezel, crystal, or case back from sealing properly, so every surface must be prepared before the finishing stage begins. In lower-priced models, workers mainly grind away excess metal, smooth the edges, perform basic polishing, and apply a colored plating layer. The goal is simply to create an appearance convincing enough at a quick glance, not to maintain long-term precision or durability. For super clone versions, the requirements are considerably higher. The unfinished cases are placed on CNC machines operating at speeds of up to 10,000 revolutions per minute to refine the movement cavity, crystal groove, crown position, and bracelet lugs. Coolant is sprayed continuously to reduce heat, remove metal chips, and limit deformation. Each surface area is then finished separately. Sections designed to reflect light are polished, while others are brushed to imitate the distinctive contrast found on high-end watches. But this is also where the boundary between genuine and counterfeit products becomes most visible. Both may involve CNC machining, polishing, and brushing, but an authentic watch case is judged by far more than its external shape. The true differences lie in the quality of the steel blank, the precision of every surface, corrosion resistance, water resistance, and the consistency maintained across thousands of finished watches. The bracelet is one of the first details that can expose a counterfeit the moment the watch is picked up. On lower-priced models, the links are often hollow, the metal is thin, and the pins fit loosely, making the bracelet feel light, rattle during movement, and quickly develop play. On super clones, the links are solid, the edges are rounded, and each surface is finished separately. Reflective areas are polished, while others are brushed to recreate the contrast found on high-end watches. The links are then connected with pins or screws before a multi-piece folding clasp is installed, and the overall weight adjusted to create a more substantial feel. But appearance is only the first layer of disguise. After a period of use, uneven gaps, sharp edges, loose clasps, or peeling plating can quickly reveal the replica. A counterfeit only needs to imitate the feel of a genuine bracelet for the first few minutes. The real one must preserve its fit, strength, and stability for years. If the outer case serves as the watch's mechanical armor, then the dial and hands are its soul, directly determining how convincing the final replica appears. When they first arrive at the workshop, tens of thousands of these components are usually still unfinished blanks. Workers begin by sorting them according to color tone, dimensions, and date window position, repeatedly placing them beside the original watch to identify even the smallest differences in proportion. The approved dials are then transferred to the printing station. Here, pad printing machines use silicone pads to press minute tracks, logos, and extremely fine technical lettering onto the surface. To make higher-end versions more convincing, the metal hour markers are not simply printed. Instead, workers use precision tweezers to insert them manually into pre-drilled holes, creating the same three-dimensional depth seen on genuine luxury watches. The hands are then checked for length, alignment, and flatness. Liquid luminous material is carefully applied to both the hands and hour markers before the components are dried and prepared for assembly. This is the stage where a collection of separate components begins to become a functioning watch. Workers first place the movement on a holder, wind it, or install a battery, and observe its operation. Any unit that stops, runs unevenly, or produces unusual sounds is immediately removed. In low-cost counterfeit watches, the movement is usually left untouched and set directly to the assembly line. In more expensive versions, however, technicians may open it to replace or refit certain gears, bridges, and the rotor at the back. Under magnification, each tiny gear is lifted with tweezers, positioned precisely on its pivot, and secured with screws only a few millimeters long. Once the movement has been reassembled, the technician gently rotates the rotor to check whether the entire gear train transfers motion continuously. A single misaligned component or an over-tightened screw can bring the whole mechanism to a stop. When the movement is running steadily, the dial is mounted and aligned so that the date window sits in the correct position. The technician then turns the crown, sets the mechanism precisely to 12 o'clock, and presses the hour, minute, and second hands onto 3 concentric shafts. The crown is rotated repeatedly to move the hands through a complete 24-hour cycle. Workers check whether the hands touch one another, scrape against the dial, or interfere with the date display. They also confirm that the date changes at the correct time. Any misalignment requires the hands to be removed and installed again. Finally, the complete movement assembly is lowered into the case and secured in place. Although each operation demands considerable precision, the scale of this process can be enormous. In 2022, authorities dismantled an underground workshop and seized more than 200,000 components intended for the production of 4,200 watches. It revealed how the same intricate assembly sequence can be divided across multiple workstations and repeated thousands of times every day. Once the caseback and bracelet are securely fastened, the watch moves to the final inspection station. Under high-intensity lighting, workers use soft brushes and compressed air to remove microscopic dust from the crystal and narrow grooves. The watch is rotated repeatedly to reveal any scratches, uneven plating, or visible surface defects. Once the appearance passes inspection, its functions are tested. The technician pulls out the crown and advances the hands through a full 24-hour cycle to check whether the date changes correctly. The clasp is opened and closed, the bezel is rotated, and the case is gently shaken to ensure that no internal component is loose. In legitimate watch factories, these tests are far more demanding because the product must remain reliable for years. On counterfeit production lines, however, the inspection is usually brief and designed mainly to remove watches with obvious defects before they are sent to the packaging area. The watches that pass inspection are sent directly to the packaging area. At the final station, fingerprints are wiped away and transparent protective film is applied to the crystal. Caseback, folding clasp, and metal links. The bracelet is then wrapped around the display cushion, and the watch is positioned neatly at the center of the prepared box. The lid is closed, the box is slipped into its outer sleeve, sealed in shrink wrap, and packed into a shipping carton. While genuine manufacturers require each serial number to match an official database, this production line focuses almost entirely on creating visual authenticity. From the arrangement of the accessories to the unboxing experience, every detail is staged to make the counterfeit appear as convincing as possible. Once boxed, the watches are stacked in layers inside large cartons, cushioned with protective material, sealed and wrapped in plastic film. Workers then load the cartons onto pallets and move them by forklift to the dispatch area, where trucks transport them to intermediary warehouses. At these locations, a large shipment may be opened and divided into dozens of smaller parcels. The watches are sorted by order, repacked into individual shipping boxes, and sent onward through postal networks, air freight, or distribution centers. This fragmented shipping method keeps the number of watches in each parcel relatively small, while collectively creating a massive and continuous flow of counterfeit goods. Before reaching retail dealers, these shipments must pass through their toughest legal barrier, customs enforcement. At inspection facilities, parcels are sent through X-ray scanners. If the system detects metal density or geometric patterns that do not match the declared contents, a manual inspection is immediately triggered. Customs officers open the shipment and randomly remove product boxes for examination. Each watch is placed under standardized lighting so inspectors can evaluate the dial, the finishing of the hands, and the engraved details. A single counterfeit watch may create a convincing illusion for a brief moment, but when hundreds are placed side by side, the weaknesses of an inconsistent production line quickly become visible through variations in weight, uneven plating colors, and mismatched typefaces. The sophistication of these supply chains has been exposed in several major cases. In 2023, U.S. Customs and Border Protection intercepted a shipment falsely declared as electronic components. Had the goods reached the market, their estimated value based on genuine retail prices could have exceeded $30 million. A counterfeit watch may fool the eye for a few seconds, but it is far more difficult to fool time. Behind its nearly identical appearance lies an entire production chain designed to replicate shape and surface detail, while the core values of a genuine timepiece remain almost impossible to reproduce. Those values come from decades of research, craftsmanship refined across generations, rigorous testing standards, and a commitment to quality that extends throughout the product's entire life. In the end, the true value of a watch is not determined by how convincing it looks, but by the precision, durability, and reliability it continues to deliver after thousands of hours of operation. And that is the greatest distance between a replica and an authentic luxury timepiece worth tens of thousands of dollars. If you enjoy exploring the hidden world of manufacturing and technology, subscribe to Factron Process and join us for the next journey.